Egypt opens Rafah border crossing to evacuate injured and foreign nationals amid Israel's bombardment of Gaza. What is at stake for the North African country? Also on the program, Rwanda announces visa-free travel for all Africans ahead of Kenya's plan to do same. Plus, Americans of African descent visit transatlantic slave trade route to mark Door of Return festival in ancient town of Badagry. This is Africa Update on Trust TV, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Ayuba Ilya. Thanks for joining. The Rafah border crossing between Gaza and Egypt has opened for the first time in more than 3 weeks of brutal conflict to allow the evacuation of dozens of injured Palestinians requiring hospital treatment and hundreds of foreign passport holders. Scores of people and cars were seen hurrying to get through the gate towards the Egyptian side through the damaged terminal area, some carrying their belongings. Egyptian Foreign Ministry has announced that Egypt will help evacuate around 7,000 foreigners and dual nationals from the Gaza Strip, representing more than 60 nationalities. Now, to further discuss this, we have in the studio Haruna Warakani, a documentalist, and Tukur Abdelkader, who is a lecturer at the Department of International Relations and Political Science, Kaduna State University. Thank you so much for joining us on Africa Update, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Well, let me start with you, Tukur, who is joining us via phone. This conversation, to start with, we'd like to ask, why did it take this long for Egypt to open its borders to Gaza? This conflict has been on for at least 3 weeks now.
Egypt had played a prominent role in the past, especially in brokering ceasefire between between Hamas and other fighters, freedom fighters, whether Islamic Jihad or Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and other freedom fighters that are fighting for the liberation of the occupied territories since 1948, and especially since the emergence of Hamas in 1987. Egypt, to me, is the sick man of the Arab world. Is the powerful, militarily speaking, is the most powerful Arab country, the most populous. Yet, just some kilometers away from Egypt, a genocide is being carried out against their brothers and sisters. And I'm not surprised. Egypt is ruled by an authoritarian, dictatorial military ruler, masking as a democrat. We should remember in 2013, the military staged a coup against the democratic elected government of Mohammed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood. And Egypt is the second largest recipient of American aid after Israel. We should also remember other Arabs that are against the emergence of popular groups like Hamas are also working hand in glove with Egypt, Israel, and the United States. So probably they are trying to save their face, and maybe the General Al-Sisi is trying to save his face, and he's also concerned about the possible outburst that may likely erupt anytime soon in the Arab world.
All right, well, let's come back to the studio now, where we have our second guest, Haruna Warakani. Well, in one breath, we hear Egypt say that it is in solidarity with the Palestinians. And then in another breath, it's, holding very dearly the keys to its borders with Gaza, restricting movement and entry. I mean, we saw the negotiations and discussions that went on before it finally allowed for humanitarian supplies to go into Gaza. So why are we seeing this?
Thank you, viewers. The role of Egypt in this crisis generally can be summed in a word: ambivalence. Egypt has shown clearly it is neither here nor there in this crisis. And this can be historically traced to the fact that Egypt recognizes that Hamas as a movement or body is home to the Muslim Brotherhood. And just like the speaker has said, the last president of Egypt had to be removed because as soon as he got into office or power, you could see that Egypt was tilting towards an Islamic state. And the country found it very difficult to accept that position. And so there were crises in the country for quite some time until the government of Mohamed Morsi was removed and replaced by the current president, General Abdel El-Sisi. Now, you could see that the Egyptians share common identity of ethnicity as Arabs and religion as Islam. However, recently, Egypt has officially declined to accept fleeing Palestinians for fear that the more Palestinians you accept across the border into Egypt, the more trouble there may be for the country in the nearest and farthest future. And so you can see the country is officially declaring that yes, they support Hamas, yes, they identify with their Muslim brothers, they also identify with their Arab brothers. However, unofficially and behind the scene, they do not accept the ideology of Hamas. And so you can see this can be summarized in the word I used, ambivalence, because they are neither here nor there. Now, secondly, Egypt is conscious of the fact that with the common border at Rafah crossings, if you open that border freely, it means thousands of Palestinians will find themselves across the Sinai Peninsula. And that could create another problem for Egypt. You are going to create a new refugee camp that will be larger than Jenin, larger than all the other refugee camps in Palestine. And so over time, it might be difficult to manage such a people. And so we have difficulty.
Okay.
Third, we must also recognize that Egypt had almost signed what is called the Abraham Accords with Israel to normalize relationship. Egypt is saying, we finally are recognizing the state of Israel to be a state that has a right to exist. Now, Hamas has declared Israel has no right to exist. And so you have a diametrically opposed position of the two countries. Hamas is saying Israel must not exist. Egypt says, finally, we are accepting that Israel has a right to exist. So you can see the complex relationship that is evolving within the larger Middle East, and particularly between Israel, Hamas, and Egypt.
All right. Well, let's go to Tukur, who is on phone there. Tukur, are there any political risk to these decisions, that Egypt is taking now? If you look at the way the number of even the injured and foreign nationals are trickling into Egypt, what are the political risks to this?
I think they are trying to survive the possible conflagration that may likely envelop the whole of the Arab world if the ongoing genocide continues. That's just for them to save their neck. It's a face-saving device. And number two, I think we should understand that Hamas in 2017 actually issued a new political document that did not make any reference to its organizational or ideological linkage with Muslim Brotherhood. That should be understood. More so, the entire leadership of the Palestinians, whether Islamic Jihad, whether Fatah, whether Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine, whether Hamas, all of them are united that they will not move an inch from Gaza Strip. Whether Egypt accepts to open the Rafah crossing, I think they only go there to seek for medical assistance and for foreign nationals. The Palestinians are willing and desirous of staying either to survive or to all perish, rather than to become refugees again, because that's the game plan of the United States, Israel, and their allies in the Arab world, who believe that the existence of Hamas poses an existential threat to their survival, to their authoritarian, totalitarian leadership that has been sustained by the United States and British as well as France for almost 70 years now. I'm referring to the likes of Saudi Arabia, the likes of Jordan, and Egypt.
Okay.
So
all right.
Egypt is not taking any risk. Rather, Egypt is trying to appease the overwhelming majority of the Egyptian people who have nothing to do with any form of peace accord with Israel.
Okay.
If we are talking about Egypt's recognition of Israel, we are only referring to the secular military elite and other corrupt leaders who have been on the beck and call of the United States since 1981. They are the ones that have recognized the existence of Israel. And in any case, if Hamas refuses to recognize the existence of Israel, and we are talking about the two-state solution, why is the other Palestinian state? We are talking of less than 20% of the land recognized since 1948. Why is the land again for the Palestinians to live? Are you talking of East Jerusalem? Are you talking of Nazareth? Are you talking of Bethlehem? Are you talking of Jericho? Or are you talking of Gaza? Where there is nothing for the Palestinians. So it is better for them to accept martyrdom or freedom.
Okay.
We supported African National Congress. All of us supported African National Congress, including its armed wing, the Encounter Musizwe, regardless of the fact that majority of the black South Africans who were suffering in the hands of the white minority rulers then were our Christian brothers. And today, surprisingly, people are not looking at this from the fact that the Palestinians are our brothers and sisters, irrespective of the fact that some of them are Christian, or majority of them are Muslims, and they are also Christian minorities. The likes of the prominent scholars like Professor Edward Said and Professor Hanan Ashrawi, all of them are Palestinian Christians. But we are so blinded by emotion and hatred that we don't see anything wrong about the ongoing genocide in Gaza.
All right. Well, Haruna, does Israel and Egypt share any common goal with regards to the presence of Hamas in Gaza?
Well, of course, the two are seen to have a common enemy, like I said, unofficially. However, the official position would naturally, for diplomatic reasons, be seen to be slightly different. The reason why Egypt and Israel accepted to sign the Abraham Accords recently, you could see is primarily for the fact that since 1948, this crisis between Israel, Hamas, and others had been raging on without a seeming solution. And for all intents and purposes, the Middle East cannot continue to be in crisis forever. There must be a solution somehow, somewhere, sometime. And that is why I think Egypt adopted a more pragmatic approach to say, okay, we can implement the two-state solution within the context of Israel and Hamas, and then recognize the two states to exist in the same space. This also, we must take note. Saudi Arabia, which is a larger power, had equally accepted to sign the Abraham Accords with Israel. And you could see normalization of diplomatic relations.
No, I'm sorry. Saudi Arabia's position is that Israel must accept that East Jerusalem should be the capital of the Palestinians.
Okay, well, let him land, then you can also...
Sorry, please.
Thank you. You see, states have a right to exist and exercise some sovereignty over their matters. And that's why the Saudi Arabians, for the first time says, yes, we will recognize the existence of the State of Israel. And we are ready to sign the Normalization Accord, which is generally called the Abraham Accord. Now, under the context of that accord would be the recognition of the two-state solutions, which is determined and endorsed by the United Nations. The agreed states or locations of Gaza, East Jerusalem, and the West Bank are clearly stated and explained in the United Nations Charter that has demarcated these areas for peaceful existence of the State of Israel and all the groupings there. Now, any other solution outside of this has proven to be very difficult to implement. And so Egypt and Saudi Arabia accepted to say, let us normalize this relationship. Let us find a way to move forward. You cannot continue in conflict forever. And don't forget, these gentlemen we are talking about, the Israelis and the Palestinians, are all but from the same family, the Abraham family. And Nabi Ibrahim, or whatever we can call them in different languages, are the same family. Why should one single family in the whole world create a situation where there is no peace? Now, recently, let us also observe that the Houthi grouping in Yemen had sent a rocket across into...
Okay, before we go there, Haruna, let's get Tukur's own reaction. Apparently, he wants to also respond to some of the issues you've raised.
I think we have to draw a line between a decision taken by unelected, corrupt, pro-American leaders that actually spy-intend the affairs of the Middle East countries. Saudi Arabia is not a democratic state. Saudi Arabia is a monarchical state. Egypt is ruled by the military, whether anybody likes it or not. Series of polls have been conducted, and more than 90% of the Arabs have maintained consistently that there should be two-state solution. In fact, an average Muslim or an average Arab do not detest the existence of Jewish people. Jewish people have been existing for centuries in the Muslim world. If you go to Iran today, Jewish people are existing. They even are represented in the Iranian parliament. There are many Arab countries that still accommodate Jewish people. The only racist country that you have today in the 21st century is the State of Israel, and which, unfortunately, the Western world, their acolytes in other parts of the world, we are not ready to accept this. In fact, in the United States today, it's a crime. Any American or British university, it is a crime for me to declare support for Hamas. But we supported Irish Republican Army.
Okay.
In the past.
Oh, all right. So
Irish Republican Army consists of a Catholic militia who were fighting for their own freedom, just like we supported African National Congress and other freedom lovers in the world. But Palestinians are not human beings. Palestinians should not be treated like the people of Southern Sudan, just like their brothers in Myanmar, in the Rakhine state, the Rohingyas.
Okay, Dr. Tukur.
The dividing line between the Palestinians and the Rohingyas is very thin today.
Well, thank you so much, Tukur Abdul Qadir, lecturer at the Department of International Relations and Political Science, Kaduna State University, and also Haruna Warkani, documentalist. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update and sharing your thoughts on this issue.
Thank you, viewers, for the opportunity to be here.
All right.
Thank you.
This is Africa Update on Trust TV, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. After the break, Americans of African descent visit transatlantic slave trade route to mark Door of Return Festival in ancient town of Badagry. Join us again for more. Thank you for staying with us. You're watching Africa Update on Trust TV, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. Now, Rwanda has announced plans to allow Africans travel visa-free to the country, becoming the latest nation on the continent to announce such measure aimed at boosting free movement of people and trade to rival Europe's zone. Now, President Paul Kagame made the announcement in Rwandan capital, Kigali, where he pitched the potential of Africa as a unified tourism destination for a continent that still relies on 60% of its tourists from outside Africa, according to data from the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa. Now, memories of transatlantic slave trade were revived during the Diaspora Door of Return Festival at Badagry in Lagos State. The festival was witnessed by several African Americans who trooped into the ancient historical city of Badagry to tour the transatlantic slave route in trace of their ancestry. Our correspondent Abdulatif Aliyu reports.
Africa and Nigeria in particular experienced centuries of transatlantic slave trade, which involved the transportation of slaves captured or sold out to slave trade through the sea. The slave traders, mainly from America, Portugal, Brazil and European countries, were historically known to ship their victims out of Nigeria through Badagry, the ancient city of Lagos, which is full of relics from the 16th to the 19th century. The festival portrays the tragedy of the transatlantic slave trade, exposing man's inhumanity to man and the dehumanization suffered by the progenitors of the African descent in the hands of the slave traders. Many African Americans were on ground to tour the routes where captured slaves were taken through to the point of no return in the Atlantic Ocean. The festival, therefore, was an appreciation of the resilience, tenacity, the strong-spirited courage of Africans who have in many instances emerged as some of the best in the world despite of the trauma of not only the transatlantic slavery but colonization. Lagos Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu said Africa deserves to be compensated by the European nations for the pains and trauma of slavery.
We will continue to forge ahead in dignity, honor, as proud members of the human race.
Dr. Julius Garvey, son of legendary Marcus Garvey, was one of the new faces at the festival, leading the pack of the African Americans who had returned to trace their roots.
The joy of return will call black people and African people from all over the diaspora, not just North America, to come and to put their feet on the ground so they can say there is a place you're actually from. Cool. And it's not a color, it's a continent and maybe a country. It could be Senegal, it could be Ghana, it can be Nigeria, it can be Kenya, it can be anywhere. And so that this walk that you're walking, even though it was known as the point of no return.
The Akran of Badagry, Dewenu Ahulumenu Toyi I, who played host to the visitors, bestowed some of the visiting African Americans with traditional titles. Giving context to the festival, Chairman Nigerians in Diaspora Commission Abike Dabiri Erewa explained that the festival started in 2017. She said some of the returnees were coming for the first time and have indicated interest to invest in Nigeria and build Diaspora Palace in Badagry.
There are too many hidden treasures, particularly in tourism in Nigeria. Badagry is just one of them. So this is the diaspora content to tourism. So we're exploring the diaspora tourism. As Dr. Anderson always says, conversation breeds comprehension. If you don't understand me, you can't know who I am. So they'll be coming to Nigeria and say, listen, this is who you are. You have such a beautiful country. We want to invest in your country. They want to build a diaspora palace here in Badagry. They want to invest in tourism and other parts here in Nigeria. So this is the diaspora content to tourism. I hope that we build on it, sustain it, and ensure that it grows bigger and bigger.
Reduced drastically now. Domestic slavery has reduced drastically. When you could see people with a bag, they'll put about 3 children inside a bag, and customs and excise, immigrations, the soldiers, they are trying their best to curb domestic slavery.
Anago Osho, the tour guide, took the visitors through the various historical sites relating to the slave trade. The sites visited included the Barracoon of Seriki Williams, which has 2 cells where male and female slaves were separately kept for several days tied down in chains before the movement to the sea. They also visited other historical sites and monuments revealing the true perspectives of the transatlantic slave trade. For the participants, the experience of the Door of Return Festival was an eye-opener and a reminder of the past with a view to work towards a freer and more liberal society.
And now with that, we wrap up Africa Update for this week. You can watch us on our social media platforms and also on our YouTube live stream. Join us again next week for another time on the program. I am Ayuba Ilya. Thanks for watching. Bye for now.